They asked me to come in at 9 a.m. sharp. By 9:07, I was no longer part of the company I helped build. They thought it was over. They had no idea. I had the kill switch. My name is Cal Rourke. I'm 38 years old. I'm not a man who talks much. I don't do long emails. I don't argue in meetings. I write code. I build systems. I make things fly. That's what I did for the last 6 years until they decided I was too expensive for my own company. But what they didn't realize was, I still held the patent for the entire flight control system. Every drone they manufactured, every dollar they raised, every contract they signed relied on something I owned. They fired me on a Monday. I didn't raise my voice, I just smiled. They made me sit in the same conference room where we pitched our first seed investors. The walls still smelled like dry erase marker and cheap victory. I built this place from wires and raw code long before the polished pitch decks and neon green office chairs showed up. Across from me was Nathan Cole, the new CEO. Silicon Valley golden boy. MBA from Stanford. Hadn't built a damn thing in his life, but he knew how to optimize burn rate and refactor team structures like a champ. And today he was refactoring me. Cal, we've decided to move in a different direction. He said it like we were discussing paint colors. Your role is being phased out. Effective immediately. No thank you. No handshake. Just a thin folder on the table with my name spelled wrong on the label. I looked down at it. The manila felt warm, like it had been printed and left under a laptop. They didn't even bother to staple the last page. I turned to Lena from HR. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She used to call me the heart of the system. Now she was pretending the floor was fascinating. I didn't ask questions, didn't argue. They had already changed the passwords. Already moved my name off the leadership slide deck. Already deactivated my keycard. This wasn't a conversation. It was a formality. So I stood up, adjusted the sleeves of my jacket, and said one sentence, "You'll be hearing from me." Nathan smirked. "If this is about severance." I shook my head. It's not. Back at my desk, there was already a security guard waiting. Just a kid probably hired 2 months ago. Didn't know who I was. Didn't know that I was the one who wrote the flight algorithm from scratch, the one no one else ever really understood. The room was quiet as I packed. No one looked up. People always look busy when shame walks by. I placed my mug, "Drones don't crash, humans do," into the box. The one my wife got me when we shipped our first working prototype. Back when I thought this was a family. It took me 7 minutes to clear everything. One for every year I'd given them. Outside, the wind cut hard through the alley between the main building and the test lot. I stood still for a moment. Watched the sky. Somewhere in that sky, a dozen of my drones were flying. Running on software I wrote. Sending data to a system I built. Staying stable because of control algorithms I tested through 27 failed simulations in a Nebraska barn. I wasn't bitter, not yet, but I was awake. 2 years ago, when we were still fighting to stay afloat, I'd filed for something they thought didn't matter. A personal utility patent for the autonomous flight control protocol. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it out of caution. Because I knew sooner or later business people come for the builders. It was written in the shareholder agreement. I kept the IP in my own name. Didn't assign it to the company. Didn't tell anyone unless they asked. No one ever asked, so now they had the hardware. They had the funding. They had the team. But I had the software. I didn't leave angry. I left silent. They thought silence meant defeat. But the thing about quiet men like me, we don't raise our voices. We raise the temperature 1 degree at a time, until something burns. People always think betrayal feels like a stab. Fast, sharp, unforgettable. But in real life, betrayal creeps. It starts with long hours, missed calls, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. And if you're not watching closely, you'll thank them while they twist the knife. 2 years before they fired me, we were still working out of a prefab shed near Highway 81. Nebraska wind cutting through the gaps in the walls, duct tape holding our server rack together. But back then, It felt like we were changing the world. We were nobodies with something real. I still remember the first time the drone lifted off 6 feet above the dirt, its rotors whining like angry bees. The sun was setting behind a line of grain silos. I had tears in my eyes and didn't even realize it until Jesse clapped me on the back and said, "Holy hell, it works." That was year 1. There were only 3 of us back then. Me code architecture, logic, hardware, integration. Jesse sales, funding, pitch decks, charm. Amber UX, telemetry, and the only one who could keep both of us from setting the barn on fire. We called it AgriCore. Jesse was my college roommate. The kind of guy who wore blazers in 90-degree weather and called people boss unironically. But he believed in me. Or at least he believed in what I could build. He said we'd be equals. Co-founders Cal, 50-50. You handle the sky. I'll handle the ground. And for a while, we were. I coded for 20 hours a day some weeks. Wrote flight control software by hand. No libraries, no shortcuts. I tested it on broken lawnmower engines, on toy drones, on simulation models in Unity. Every bug I crushed made the code sharper, leaner, faster. By year 2, we were mapping entire fields in under 30 minutes. By year 3, we had 5 test drones, a real office, and our first pitch to investors. That's when the shift began. They told me I was too technical to present at the pitch. Said Jesse had the better founder voice. I didn't argue. I liked staying out of the spotlight. But something in my gut shifted when Jesse showed the flight demo and called it our shared baby. The flight software wasn't shared. He'd never even opened the repository. Then came the lawyers. We were forming an LLC, splitting equity, standard stuff. They sent me a stack of papers and asked me to sign. Told me it was all boilerplate. I read every line anyway. And I noticed something. They left out the IP clause. They were assuming I'd assign the code base to the company automatically. I didn't. Instead, I did what I'd always planned to do. I filed U.S. Patent 11279 FCP under my own name. Filed it personally, quietly, paid for it with my own money. It covered the proprietary flight control protocol I'd developed, the very brain of every drone we had. Not the shell, not the camera, the nervous system. The filing didn't show up in a standard Google search. And I didn't volunteer the information. I wasn't hiding it. I was just protecting myself from a future I was beginning to see more clearly. We grew fast after that, too fast. Series A funding brought in a board. The board brought in structure. Structure brought in consultants' performance metrics, and eventually Nathan Cole. Jesse pitched him as a rocket ship kind of guy. I saw him for what he was, a glorified buzzword machine with a Rolex. He shook my hand too hard when we first met. Said, "So you're the code wizard." I smiled. Wizards don't share their spellbooks. Over the next 6 months, things got weird. They started moving design meetings without me. Amber left the company quietly suddenly. No one gave a real reason. New engineers joined the team. They were younger, cheaper, and loud. One of them once told me, "We're rewriting the core system to modernize it." I said nothing. The core system they were rewriting was encrypted, and the documentation they had access to was a carefully sanitized version I had prepared. I started to feel like a ghost in my own company, but I kept showing up, kept running tests, kept committing code, and kept watching. One night after everyone had left, I ran a private diagnostic on our central drone fleet. I injected a harmless override into the firmware, just enough to prove something to myself. 10 units blinked, hesitated mid-hover, then recovered, exactly as I expected. The system still listened to me. Not them, me. That was when I knew. They could fire me. They could take the office, the interns, the PR team, but they couldn't take the sky. I walked out of that office for the last time a year later. Fired. Dismissed. Deleted from the org chart. But what they didn't realize was that they'd built their entire empire on software they didn't own. They don't stab you in the front. In business, betrayal doesn't wear a villain's mask. It wears a lanyard. It says things like, "Hey, quick sync," or "Let's loop back on that." The first real cut wasn't when they fired me. It was much earlier when they started acting like I didn't matter. It began with a meeting I wasn't invited to. Nothing unusual on the surface. A strategic alignment session about expanding into Latin America. Except the entire technical architecture would depend on long-range drone flight which ran on my control system. I found out about it when Jesse casually mentioned it while passing my desk. Board wants to open up Brazil. Cole says we need battery redundancy and better AI terrain mapping. You got anything cooking for that? I stared at him. I'd pitched both those features 6 months ago. Back then, Jesse called them premature. Now they were Cole's ideas. I went back to my workstation, opened the server logs, checked access history. One of the junior devs, Max, had cloned my repository 3 days earlier. He didn't have permission, but someone had bumped his credentials to super user. Someone named N. Cole. That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot long after sunset. The others had gone home. The building was lit like a ghost shell, empty desks glowing in silence. I didn't feel rage, not yet. Just something quieter, colder. Calculation. The next day, Max came to me with a question about the PID tuning module. His face was nervous, like a kid who'd peeked into a safe and couldn't figure out how to close it. Hey, Cal, I think I broke something in the auto-balance logic. The rotors won't stabilize over 5 meters. I already knew, because I built it that way. The public version of the code had a buried kill switch in the logic tree. Any unauthorized copy running on a new device would throw silent instability at random intervals. Not a bug, a warning. I leaned back in my chair. Try increasing the proportional gain coefficient, I said. He blinked. Won't that overshoot the... I smiled. Only if you don't know where the zero line is. He nodded, pretending to understand, and left. He wouldn't figure it out. Because the answer wasn't in the math. The answer was me. Later that week, I was invited to a tech handoff review. That was the subject line. Cold, corporate, sanitized. Inside the room, Nathan, Jesse, Lena from HR, and 2 engineers I didn't recognize. "This is just to document your modules for scalability," Nathan said. His tone was light, too light. He wasn't asking. They wanted me to hand over my system, line by line. I played along. "Sure," I said, opening a terminal window on the projector. Typed a few harmless lines of pseudocode. Explained how telemetry packages worked. Gave them just enough detail to feel like they'd won something. But the real code was stored offline, encrypted, and fingerprinted to my GitHub commits. If they tried to use it without my keys, it would flag their system as a clone. The worst part wasn't Nathan. It was Jesse. He sat there nodding along. The same guy who once drove across state lines to deliver my prototype to a test site because my truck broke down. Now he was silent, folding into the room like it was normal. He didn't look at me, didn't defend me, didn't speak. Just clicked his pen and nodded like the CEO's echo. That night, I went home and poured a whiskey. Didn't even take off my shoes. My wife Maren asked me how the day went. I said they're cutting me out. She sat down beside me, didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "Are you ready for that?" I looked out the window toward the horizon where the sky met the wheat fields. "No," I whispered. "But I've already started preparing." 3 days later, an email came. Subject org structure refresh. Q3 implementation. It was masked as a routine update, but inside it listed new reporting lines. The CTO role was being reimagined as a tech advisor. I was no longer listed under product or engineering. I was nowhere, just a ghost with a name badge. That weekend, I returned to the place where it all started, our original workshop by the grain silos. The building was half collapsed now. We hadn't used it in years. But I had left something there, a dusty old hard drive in a fireproof case. Inside every line of source code from version 1.0, the raw, uncut truth. I sat in the silence of that building and copied the files again. Checked the signatures, ran a diff check. Everything still matched. It wasn't paranoia, it was insurance. Monday morning, they announced the hiring of a new VP of engineering. His name was Jordan Keller. He was 28. Came from a SaaS startup that had failed quietly last year. He wore Yeezys to the office. Called me sir the first time we met. You still working on the drone logic stuff, he asked. I nodded. Cool, he said, then left. The knife was already in. They just hadn't twisted it yet. You don't always hear the knife slide in. Sometimes it's silent, just the sound of a Slack notification. Or a calendar invite titled Quick Catch-Up, 15 minutes through. The official firing came on a Monday. Gray sky dead coffee inbox already full by 8:17 a.m. I got the invite at 8:34. Subject realignment check-in. Sender Nathan Cole. I already knew. I'd been watching the logs. Watching my access slowly shrink like a dying lung. From root to admin. Admin to read-only. Last Friday they removed me from the dev Slack channel. Today they removed me from the company. 9 a.m. sharp. Same glass conference room. Same fake succulents on the table. Same laminated core values taped to the wall like they meant something. Nathan sat across from me. Fresh haircut. Designer watch. Looked like he practiced his empathy face in the mirror. Lena from HR was there typing notes before a word was spoken. Cal Nathan started, "This isn't easy." I nodded, "Then don't do it." He blinked, thrown off. That made me smile. He tried again. "We've reviewed our growth trajectory and decided to move in a new direction. One that prioritizes scalability, efficiency, and future-facing innovation." Translation: "You're too expensive, too old, too in the way." Lena slid a folder across the table. "This is your offboarding packet. Severance details, NDA Cobra info." I didn't open it. "You've been instrumental," Nathan said like he was reciting from a script. "But the company needs to evolve." I looked him dead in the eye. "You think you're the evolution?" He didn't answer. Didn't have to. I stood, pushed the folder back toward them. "I won't be needing that," Cal Lena said gently. "You'll want to review the... I won't be signing anything." My voice was calm, cold, steel under silk. Nathan stiffened. "That could complicate things." "For who?" "They didn't follow me out. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask for a knowledge transfer. They didn't know what I still controlled." Back at my desk, I found a cardboard box waiting. A security guard standing 3 feet away. New kid. Probably 24. Hadn't been born when I started writing code. Had no idea the very system he was guarding was still running on my algorithm. I packed slow. 1 mug, 1 framed photo of the test flight, 1 backup USB from 2020 empty just there to make them wonder. At the bottom of the drawer, a keycard from our first office. I kept that one. Symbolic. As I walked out, I passed Jesse. He was standing by the coffee machine laughing with one of the new sales hires. He saw me. His smile faltered for half a second. Then he turned away. Didn't say a word. He was the one who'd called me brother back when we started this thing in a garage. The same one who promised you and me, Cal, partners forever. Now I was being escorted out of our company by a kid who called me sir. At 11:07 a.m., my Slack was deactivated. At 11:09, my email. At 11:12, the remote admin channel to our drone fleet went dark. Or so they thought. What they didn't know was this. There was one more channel, one they never touched. One built into the firmware itself. A fallback line, encrypted, invisible. It wasn't in the documentation. Wasn't on the cloud. It was in the code. Mine. That night I went home and powered up an old laptop. No company logos, no monitoring tools. Just me and the interface. I logged in through a private proxy, tapped into the fleet telemetry. Each drone pinged back. Status active. Firmware v9.6c, my final build. I hovered over the option I'd coded 2 years ago. Engage safe mode. It wouldn't crash them, wouldn't destroy anything, but it would ground every drone indefinitely. I didn't press it, not yet. Instead, I made dinner with Marin, played chess with my son, watched the wheat bend in the wind behind our house, because I wasn't in a hurry. They thought firing me was the end of it. They thought I'd just disappear. But I don't vanish. I wait. They took what I built, and now they're flying blind on wings they don't understand. Built with code they don't own, and powered by something they'll never control again. It happened at exactly 6:12 a.m. on a Thursday. Not because it was strategic, not because I wanted to send a message, because I was awake. And they weren't. I brewed my coffee slow. Watched the steam rise like breath from something alive. Outside, the sky was just beginning to change black, turning soft, bruised blue. I opened the laptop. No fanfare, no security badge, no welcome screen. Just a terminal window. A heartbeat blinking, waiting for a command. I typed one word. Initiate safe mode all. Then I paused, fingers resting on the keys. Across the country, in dozens of barns, sheds, and research fields, over 200 drones sat sleeping, charging, blinking, waiting. Each one connected. Each one pinged the network once every 10 minutes, like a child whispering, "I'm still here. I didn't want to hurt anything. That's not who I am. I just wanted silence." I hit enter. The code executed in under 7 seconds. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of coffee. Dark roast, no sugar. Somewhere in western Kansas, a drone meant to scan wheat fields for blight errors froze mid-pre-flight. Its rotors didn't respond. The screen flashed autonomous navigation protocol missing. Contact system administrator. There was no system administrator. In Iowa, 3 drones grounded themselves at 7:01 a.m. One tried to boot and restarted in an infinite loop. The onboard AI flagged it as a firmware mismatch. There was no mismatch, it was a lockout. By 8:42 a.m., over half the AgriCore fleet had gone offline. The rest would follow. My code was polite. It gave them a chance, but not a choice. At 9:16 a.m., Jesse called me. First time in months. I let it ring. He called again. Then a text. "Hey man, weird bug this morning. Know anything?" Weird bug. That's what he called it. At 10:02 a.m., Nathan emailed me from his personal Gmail. Subject urgent, quick question. "Hi Cal, we're seeing some anomalies with the flight software. Are you available to chat? Hope all's well. Best Nathan." Hope all's well. They never know how to ask for help without pretending it's casual. I didn't respond, not yet. They needed to sweat. By noon, the news had reached Twitter. A grower in Nebraska posted a video drone fleet down. "Nothing works. Anyone else seeing this?" A comment thread exploded. Same here in Colorado. Reboot didn't fix it. Company support not answering. AgriCore's official account posted at 12:43 p.m. "We're experiencing temporary issues with some field units. Working on a fix. Thank you for your patience." There was no fix. Only a license key. And I had it. At 1:30 p.m., a number I didn't recognize rang. It was their new VP of Engineering, Jordan Keller, Yeezys and all. "Cal," he asked, voice tight. "This is Jordan. I was hoping to touch base about, the firmware thing. We think there may have been a legacy trigger. We're not accusing, just hoping you could take a look." I let him finish. Let the awkward stretch out like gum on a shoe. Then I said I'd need a license agreement. "Sorry, you're running proprietary software. It's locked for security. Licensing's required." He stammered. We thought that IP was company-owned. You thought wrong." At 3:14 p.m., my lawyer sent an official letter of notice to AgriCore's board. Subject: unauthorized use of protected patent US 279 FCP. The letter outlined that the flight control system was registered under my name, that I never assigned the rights to the company, that continued use constituted infringement, that legal action would follow in 7 business days unless licensing was secured. We attached logs, date-stamped commits, chain of custody for the patent. At 4:07 p.m., Nathan called again. I let it go to voicemail. "Hey Cal, listen, this has gone way beyond us. Can we talk? Please." That night I had dinner with Marin. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes. Our son talked about his school drone project. "I want to build something that flies better than anything," he said. I smiled. "You will," I said. "Just remember who wrote the first one." After he went to bed, I sat back at my laptop. One more terminal window. I ran a diagnostic. Drone count 237, active units 0, pending requests 14, unauthorized clones 0. Clean, silent, perfect. They built their empire on my code. And now they knew what happened when the engineer doesn't vanish. By Friday morning, they stopped calling. They didn't stop because they gave up. They stopped because they were drowning. It started with one farm, then a dozen. By sunrise, the drones weren't just failing to launch, they were refusing to fly. All across the Midwest cornfields, soybean rows, wheat belts, operators powered on connected to base stations and got the same error. Unauthorized flight software detected. Contact manufacturer. The manufacturer had no answer, because the manufacturer didn't own the software. At 9:02 a.m., AgriCore's largest client, Delwyn Agro, filed a formal complaint. $1.8 million in drone hardware sitting idle during peak harvest prep. A single day of downtime could ruin acres. By 10:41 a.m., a lawyer from Delwyn sent AgriCore a certified letter, breach of technology performance agreement. That's when the board started panicking. Inside AgriCore HQ, the mood turned from quirky tech startup to full-blown disaster command center. Whiteboards once covered with mind maps and dopamine quotes now held two words: firmware lockout. They brought in outside consultants. 2 ex-Google Cloud engineers and a guy who used to do firmware for DJI. None of them could fix it. One of them finally said it out loud. "It's not a bug, it's intentional. Someone designed this." Nathan's face reportedly went white. Behind closed doors, they started asking questions they should have asked 2 years ago. Who wrote the control core? Was it ever officially transferred? Do we actually own it? And slowly the realization sank in. They'd built $1 billion vision on a borrowed brain. At 2:14 p.m., Jesse finally broke the silence. He showed up at my house. I saw his car from the window. Black Tesla. Vanity plate risk tacker. He knocked once, then again. I let him stand there. Marin looked at me. "You gonna let him in?" "No," I said. I watched him through the curtain. He looked smaller now. Suits don't fit right when the weight of a bad bet starts showing. He left a manila envelope in the mailbox. Inside a letter, handwritten. "Cal, this is bigger than both of us now. We need to make this right. Call me." No signature. No apology. Just need. I didn't respond. They still thought this was a negotiation. They didn't understand yet. This was an audit. By Saturday, the press picked up the story. Drone disruption, AgriCore units go dark amid legal dispute with former engineer. They called me a disgruntled ex-employee. Funny. I wasn't disgruntled when I wrote the code, or when I handed them years of my life. I became disgruntled when they erased my name from the system I created. The article went viral. Comments exploded. "This is why you don't screw over engineers." He warned them. They laughed. "Respect the builder or rebuild it yourself." Someone even found the patent record. Posted screenshots. US 11279 FCP registered to Cal Rourke. The story was no longer internal. It belonged to the public now. By Sunday, a new email hit my inbox. Subject: formal licensing offer, urgent. They were offering 7 figures. A licensing agreement retroactive. A clause that absolved them of any wrongdoing. I didn't reply. Not yet, because this wasn't about money. It was about reminding them that every boardroom empire, every slick pitch deck, every Series A balloon ride, all of it still depends on people like me. Monday, Delwyn Agro terminated their contract. 3 more clients followed. By Tuesday, AgriCore's valuation dropped by $48 million. The board called an emergency meeting. And for the first time they asked, who let this happen? Nathan tried to shift blame. Jesse tried to disappear. Jordan, the VP of engineering, reportedly said, "I never saw the original code. It was locked. It's like it was built to self-destruct." It wasn't. It was built to protect itself. From them. Meanwhile, I took a walk through the old test field. The place where we launched drone ROR One. The tall grass had grown back, but I could still see the imprint of those early flights. The ghost of something pure. Before the pitch decks. Before the betrayal. Marin met me at the gate with the thermos of coffee. We didn't speak. Just stood there, watching the sky, clear, unbothered. Let them scramble. Let them offer money apologies, NDAs, revised contracts. Let them learn the cost of arrogance. I didn't crash their drones. I simply grounded them, because not everything has to burn. Some things just have to stop moving, to be remembered. The first call came at 8:03 a.m. sharp. Unknown number. San Francisco area code. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another. Same number. Same silence on the line. Then a third this time. A voice. Hi, Cal. This is Vanessa Worth, External Counsel for AgriCore. I'm reaching out on behalf of the executive board. They'd like to initiate a good faith conversation regarding licensing. We believe there's a mutually beneficial path forward. Please let us know your availability. Thank you. Mutually beneficial. There's a phrase you don't hear until someone's knee-deep in consequences. I poured coffee. Listened to the message again. Then again. Vanessa's voice was calm. Measured. Expensive. It had the weight of someone used to cleaning up bloodstains with handkerchiefs. By noon, I'd received 4 more calls. 2 from Jesse. 1 from a blocked number. 1 from an unfamiliar New York number, probably investor relations. I ignored them all. At 3:12 p.m. I got an email. Subject: licensing proposal, immediate access request. Attached was a 7-page PDF, nicely formatted. AgriCore logo in the corner, like they still believed it held power over me. The offer was clear. $2.2 million upfront licensing fee. 5-year exclusive use of the flight control protocol. Backdated agreement to prevent public litigation. My silence in writing. They also included a reinstatement opportunity, offering me a senior engineering title and a strategic partner role. It read like they were doing me a favor. I closed the document, didn't delete it, didn't respond. I wasn't ready to say yes. Not because I needed more money. Because they weren't scared enough yet. That night, Jesse sent a video message. His face was pale. No blazer, no sales pitch. Just a man trying not to look like he was drowning. Cal, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. Hell, I wouldn't blame you if you never did again. But I'm asking. Man to man. The company's falling apart. Nathan's days are numbered. The board's panicking. This tech, you built it. You're the only one who can save it. They're finally listening. You come back and we fix this. Together. Funny thing about betrayal. It breaks the bridge from both ends. Even if they want to rebuild it, you no longer need the path. The next morning I met with my lawyer. We drafted a reply, not a response, a position. We didn't talk about returning. We talked about leverage. And I had all of it. We proposed $10 million upfront, 3% equity stake, public acknowledgement of my patent, no employment consultant, only with my terms, a written apology from the board. We sent it, and we waited. They didn't answer for 2 days. That told me they were scrambling. On day 3, Vanessa called again. This time I picked up. Mr. Rourke, she said smoothly, thank you for engaging. It's not engagement, I replied, it's notice. She chuckled. Understood. I've been asked to express sincere interest in your proposal. The board is prepared to meet many of your terms. Not many, I corrected, all. A pause. Then we'd like to schedule a call. We set the call for Friday, 10 a.m. Board members, investors, Nathan, and me. Friday arrived. I logged in 5 minutes early. Their faces were already on screen. Corporate backgrounds, brittle smiles, tension humming through the Wi-Fi. Nathan looked older, eyes puffy, like someone who hadn't slept in 3 days. Good. Cal, the chairman, began. We appreciate your time and patience. I nodded, didn't smile, didn't speak. Let the silence stretch until someone broke. Vanessa did. We've reviewed your terms, and we're prepared to proceed pending one clarification, which is... She glanced off camera, then leaned in. We'd like to omit the public acknowledgement of the patent. strictly from a branding perspective. No, Cal. It's mine, I said. Flat, steel. The world should know. Nathan cleared his throat. We're trying to avoid setting a precedent. You already did, I said, when you built your empire on stolen code. Dead silence. Then the chairman spoke. Agreed, we'll include the acknowledgement. 1 hour later, the deal was signed. Digitally, irrevocably. I didn't smile. When the meeting ended, I sat back in my chair. Didn't feel triumph. Didn't feel joy. Just the stillness that comes when you know they can't take from you anymore. The headlines came that afternoon. AgriCore secures emergency licensing deal with fired engineer. The man who grounded $1 million drone fleet. When the coder holds the kill switch. I didn't give interviews, didn't tweet, didn't brag. I just went outside, stood in the open, watched the sky, and smiled, not because I won, but because they finally understood what I built. They thought the storm was over. The deal was signed. The code was licensed. The drones were flying again. But a storm doesn't end just because you stop watching it. Sometimes the eye passes, and what comes next is worse. It started with an article in Tech Republic, licensing a lockout, what AgriCore's drone disaster means for startup IP law. It wasn't just about me. It was about every engineer, every founder, every underpaid developer who'd ever been asked to just sign this. The article went viral. So did my name, Cal Rourke, the man who grounded his own company, the man who kept the receipts. Lawyers called it a watershed moment. Startups called it a disaster model. And investors, they called it a liability. That's when the real panic began, not in the office, but in the boardroom. 3 shareholder groups filed motions demanding full IP transparency. They wanted proof that every part of AgriCore's tech stack was legally owned and licensed. Turns out, it wasn't. One of the machine vision modules built off an open-source library with an expired attribution license. Violation. One of the internal mapping tools copied from a third-party contractor without sign-off. Violation. They opened the lid to find termites in the foundation, and I had just lit the match. Inside AgriCore, the legal team expanded overnight. Outside consultants, compliance officers. They called it Operation Iron Broom. They were trying to clean the blood with bleach. And Nathan was circling the drain. He tried to make a move. Tried to sell his version of the story to a friendly outlet. Claimed I'd sabotaged the system post-termination. That I willfully disrupted commercial operations. They ran it, but the headline didn't go the way he wanted. Ex-AgriCore CEO claims sabotage court documents show he never owned the code. The backlash was brutal. Developers dragged him. Lawyers corrected him. Even some of AgriCore's partners pulled out of upcoming deals. 4 days later, the board announced Nathan's departure. Voluntary, of course. That's what they always say before the security escort. Jesse stayed quiet. He always had a survival instinct. Cowardice dressed in charisma. Meanwhile, I received an invitation. A well-known tech conference wanted me to speak. Panel title: The Kill Switch Era, When Founders Fight Back. I declined. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I already said it. With silence, with code, with patience. The industry started shifting. Startups began rewriting their agreements. VCs began asking harder questions about who actually owns the code. Even boot camps started teaching IP literacy as part of their curriculum. I wasn't a rebel anymore. I was a case study. At home, things were quiet. Marin started planting tomatoes in the backyard. Our son built a quadcopter with a camera. Said he wanted to map the town. I told him to own the code this time. He grinned. One afternoon, while walking past the old shed, I found something strange. An envelope, no stamp, no name. Just left at the door. Inside a photo. The 3 of us, me, Jesse, Amber, standing in front of the first prototype drone. Sweaty, grinning, hopeful. On the back, in Jesse's handwriting. You were always the engine. I just tried to steer. I didn't know what to feel. Regret? Maybe. But some doors don't close quietly. Some doors slam. And sometimes they need to. A week later, I received a new offer. Not from AgriCore, from their biggest competitor. They wanted me to build a new system, clean, secure, founder-owned from the ground up. They weren't just offering a contract, they were offering a blank page. I said no, not because I couldn't, but because this time, I wanted to fly on my own. It had been 7 months since I'd last seen Jesse. 7 months since I walked out of the company we built. 7 months since he looked at me like I was the problem when all I'd ever done was give that place a soul. Now he wanted a meeting. Not a call, not a Zoom, face to face. The message came from his personal email. Just coffee. No lawyers, no pitches, just us. I need to say it out loud. I owe you that much. I didn't answer for 2 days. Not because I was angry. I'd moved past anger. I was interested in who he thought I still was. We met at an old diner just outside the city. One we used to hit during the early days back when we were broke and driven and stupidly proud of it. I arrived first. Sat in the back booth, same one as always. Watched the door. He showed up late, of course. Still had the startup casual look, tailored hoodie, $400 sneakers, the exhausted charm of a man who used to win rooms just by entering them. But now he looked thinner, tired in the eyes. "Cal," he said, nodded like we were still friends. I didn't smile, just motioned to the seat across from me. He sat. The waitress came. We both ordered coffee, black, like old times. Silence stretched. Finally he spoke. "I watched the entire thing happen from inside a glass box," he said. "They shut me out too. You weren't the only one." I stared at him. "No, you didn't sign off on the new leadership, the equity dilution, the vote to bring in coal." He sighed. "I did. But I didn't understand what I was signing. That's the difference between you and me, Jesse. I read everything." He flinched. Not visibly, but I saw it. The kind of wince you give yourself for being seen too clearly. "I was scared, Cal," he admitted. "They told me we'd lose funding if we didn't streamline. Said you were too rooted in old architecture. Too rigid." Translation: I wasn't obedient. "No, you weren't political. That's not a flaw." He nodded slowly. "I know that now." Another silence. The coffee arrived. Steam rose between us like the ghost of something that used to be warm. "I came here to say I'm sorry," he said, "for letting it happen, for not standing up for you, for not protecting what we built." I believed him, not because of what he said, but because he looked broken in a way you can't fake. And maybe, just maybe, because part of me still remembered that kid in the garage soldering wires with shaking hands, telling me we were going to change the world. But I didn't let him off the hook. You could have said something when they rewrote the stack. When they stripped my access. When they used my name in press releases and erased it from the whiteboard. I know. You sat in the room when they asked me to document my own execution. I know. He looked down. I was a coward. I nodded. You were. He breathed deep, then looked up. But I want to rebuild, Cal, not just business. I mean, what we had. The thing that worked before money poisoned it. I stirred my coffee. You can't rebuild what's already been replaced. He blinked. What do you mean? I pulled a small black flash drive from my pocket. Set it on the table. Version 11. Flight control rebuilt from scratch. No code dependencies, no ghost logic. All mine. He stared at it. Is that the future? I shook my head. No, that's mine. The future, you don't get a vote in that anymore. His mouth opened, then shut. The finality hit him like cold air. I stood, dropped some bills on the table, nodded at the waitress. Good luck, Jesse, I said, sliding the flash drive back into my coat. For real. But I don't owe you anything anymore. He didn't chase me, didn't stand. Just sat there alone in the booth, holding a cooling cup of coffee, staring at a future that no longer had his name on it. I stepped outside. The sky above was clear. Not a drone in sight. Good. Some days weren't meant for watching the sky. Some were meant for walking away while the sky followed you. Some people think revenge means burning everything down. That it ends with someone begging or bankrupt or broken. But real revenge, it's peace. On your own terms, with no one left to take credit for your quiet victories. I didn't post about it. Didn't rent an office. Didn't slap a logo on a whiteboard and call it innovation. I just started building again. In the workshop behind my house, the one that smelled like pine solder and memories, I began sketching new wings. This time, lighter, faster, cleaner. No team, no board. Just me, some tools, and the kind of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I called it ROR One. Not flashy, just honest. I'd learned a few things since AgriCore. I didn't need to scale fast, didn't need to pitch anyone. All I needed was to build something real and keep the leash in my hand this time. The first prototype wasn't much to look at. 3D printed body, off-the-shelf sensors, wiring like spaghetti. But it moved. Smooth. Obedient. Like it could feel where I wanted it to go before I told it. Marin would peek in, sometimes bring tea. She never asked about investors. She knew better. She asked what the drone could do. I told her whatever I tell it, and nothing I don't. She smiled. That's new. I tested it in the backfield. No cameras, no reporters. Just me and the wind. It rose 6 feet, then 10. Hung there like it was listening. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. That night, I filed a new provisional patent. Filed it myself, in my name. Encrypted the code. Watermarked the firmware. Created an automated alert system to flag unauthorized access attempts. Never again. Within a month, I had a working fleet of 3. Small, sleek, agile. Built not for farmland or spectacle, but for resilience. ROR One could run for 4 hours on a single charge. Self-correct mid-flight in unpredictable weather. And most important, it ran on a logic core no one but me understood. I wasn't looking to go public. I wasn't chasing venture capital. I just quietly sent demo units to 3 places. A fire department in Colorado, a search and rescue team in Oregon, a reforestation NGO in Kenya. No marketing, no splashy launch, just performance. Within weeks, I started getting emails. This thing navigated smoke where our GPS couldn't. The terrain map recalibrated faster than anything we've used. What else does it do? My answer: whatever it needs to. The orders started trickling in, not millions, but real. Teams who didn't care about buzzwords, just wanted drones that worked, stayed in the air, and didn't betray them mid-mission. Imagine that. Jesse never called again. Neither did Vanessa. Nathan was gone. AgriCore. They limped through a rebrand, tried to act like the past never happened. But the industry remembered. And every time they pitched their new direction, people asked the same quiet question. But do you own the software this time? I didn't answer interviews. But I read the headlines. Ex-founder launches ethical drone company from garage again. The man who said no to millions. Again. ROR One isn't here to take over. Just to fly right. I wasn't trying to win. I was just tired of losing the right way. One evening, my son came into the workshop. He held a folded sheet of paper. It's a name, he said, for your drone. I opened it. 4 words written in shaky block letters. It listens to you. I smiled. He got it. He really got it. That night, I made the final change to the firmware. Hard-coded a phrase into the boot screen. Trust is the only engine. Then I looked out the window, past the field, past the quiet trees. And I whispered, let's try this again. The request came in an envelope. Thick paper. Wax seal. Like it belonged to another century. Inside a letter. Dear Mr. Rourke, we are hosting an alumni series this fall for notable engineers and innovators. Our students would be honored if you'd speak about your journey, the code, the conflict, the comeback. Respectfully, Department of Applied Robotics, Midwestern Polytechnic University. My alma mater. The place I learned how to solder, debug, survive. I hadn't been back since 2004. At first, I set the letter aside. Didn't respond. Didn't plan to. I didn't want to be a story. I wanted to build. But something about the timing, about my son, about the silence after all the fire, it made me wonder if it was time to pass something forward. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of 200 students. They didn't clap like a TED Talk crowd. They watched. Eager, sharp, hungry. The kind of silence that means they're listening. I told them the truth, not the version in the articles. I told them how we started in a garage, how we raised money, too fast, trusted, too easy, signed without reading. How I wrote code that could move a machine 20 feet in the air but couldn't stop a friend from selling me out. And then I told them what came after. The lockout, the fallback line, the silence, the rebuild, and finally the peace. When it ended, the room stayed quiet. No applause at first. Then one student stood up. "How did you know when to stop fighting them?" I looked at him, and I said, "When I realized I didn't want their world back. I wanted to build my own." Afterward, a professor pulled me aside. Gray beard, oil-stained lab coat. He handed me a small folder, inside a list of 10 students. "These kids want to build what you did," he said. "But the right way, with heart, not hype." He didn't say what he was asking, but I heard it loud and clear. Mentor them, protect them from what happened to you. Be the engineer you needed 20 years ago. That night I sat in my hotel room. Didn't turn on the TV, just stared at the folder. Names, dreams, potential. I realized then, this was my legacy. Not the patent, not the kill switch, not the headlines, but them, the next builders. Over the next few months I took them on. Not as employees, not as interns, as co-pilots. We stripped drones down to bone and copper. We talked ethics, redundancy, offline overrides. We talked about trust as a design principle. One of them, Sienna, asked me once, "Do you ever regret writing that lockout code?" I paused, then nodded. Sometimes. Not because it wasn't right, but because it proved how wrong they were to ever need it. In December, we launched a new prototype. 6 rotors, reinforced carbon frame, fail-safe logic independent of GPS. 100% open source. We called it the Canary, because it sings before the danger comes. We released it under a shared license. No company, no board, just builders. It flew better than anything I'd ever made. And this time I didn't keep the key for myself. I gave it to all of them. Legacy isn't what you keep. It's what you give away and still see flying long after you're gone. They asked me if I wanted a plaque. The university, the board, even a few reporters. Something to mark the moment. Founder, engineer, disruptor. Funny thing is, they only give you plaques once you've stopped building. I declined. Told them if they needed to write something down, they could write it in code. A protocol, a rule, a warning. So I wrote one last patch. A module, simple, elegant, 6 lines of logic. Rule 0. The machine listens to the one who built it, not the one who bought it. I embedded it in Canary's public source. Open, visible, a heartbeat waiting to be heard by anyone paying attention. No kill switches this time, no buried traps, no revenge written in syntax, just truth. Then I stepped back, let the students take over. Let the drones fly. I still get emails sometimes. Photos, videos, logs. A drone hovering beside a mountaintop in Peru. Another flying rescue support during a wildfire in Idaho. One mapped a coral reef in Indonesia with minimal surface disruption. They don't call them Rourke drones, and I don't correct them. They don't belong to me anymore. That's how I know they're working. Sometimes I still go out to the field behind the house. The test field. The place where it all began. I sit in a folding chair, coffee in hand, and wait for the whirring sound I know better than my own breath. They rise like birds now, smooth, silent, certain. They don't need me anymore! And that's the point. Maren joins me sometimes. She'll ask, "Do you miss it?" And I'll say, I never left it. I just stopped letting other people steal it. Jesse sent me one final message, years later. Just 3 words. "You were right." No signature, didn't need one. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Some messages are just echoes returning home. As for AgriCore, they merged, then rebranded, then slowly disappeared into the noise. They'll try again someday. New name, new buzzwords. But the world's watching now. The code is smarter. The builders, wiser. I never made another company. I didn't need to. Because I finally understood something. I wasn't fired. I was freed. And the thing they tried to bury, that one kernel of quiet defiance, it took flight, not to destroy, but to remind the world that what you build with integrity can never be grounded. So if you're listening to this, if you've ever been shut out, sold out, or stepped over, remember, you don't need a boardroom to build something real. You don't need applause to earn your worth. And you don't need permission to take flight. Just keep the key, keep the truth, and keep building. Because someday, they'll realize they needed you more than you ever needed them. And by then, you'll already be flying.